Hi, my name's Dan Squire. I'm a local comedian in Oxford, and for work, I work for a marketing agency specialising in big tech. So we sell a lot of kind of AI and machine learning solutions for some of the big tech companies that you've probably heard
Just don't trust the experts, right? Just go out and do your own research, okay? You just go, the facts are all out there, but don't use Google, okay? Don't trust Google, because Google is a global fascist conspiracy corporation, okay? Because they think they got the monopoly on all the information, because you used to be able to use other search engines, right? You used to be able to ask Jeeves, because Jeeves knew the truth, but what happened to Jeeves? What happened to Jeeves? Jeeves' lips were sealed. Now let's talk about the big conspiracy, the one no one's talking about, right? Flat Earth, okay? Like this is big. Flat Earth is big, right? Like, and I'll tell you now, like lots of people don't believe it now, but the dawn of flat Earth theory is just over the horizon, okay? It's coming.
I suppose it's worth addressing your head. We might as well get that out of the way. Otherwise, we're going to probably be distracted from your content. What's going on with that, mate?
Yeah. So
well, I know. But
at the height of lockdown, I figured it would be a good idea to kind of do some good and maybe entertain people as well, to raise money for Shelter, the UK homelessness charity, by doing something that I could do at home without kind of going out and running a marathon or whatever. And so I kind of auctioned off my hairstyle options to friends, family, co-workers, and so on. And we raised quite a lot of money, which is why I've ended up with such a terrible haircut as this. So yeah, that's the backstory. So I suspect that AI will become I'm like confident that AI will become better. I don't think there's a huge amount of doubt about that. But it will become better, at least in the short term, at doing discrete tasks, which is what it tends to do at the moment with specific artificial intelligence. So it's where it is used, it's like to analyze data sets in a science lab, or to do natural language processing to try and develop a robot that can respond to questions. But it doesn't tend to be we're nowhere near artificial general intelligence, which is the kind of the sci-fi model of like the kind of Skynet or kind of iRobot type intelligence. And so I think I'm not sure about the kind of morals or ethics of it, but I do think in terms of being able to help comedians with discrete tasks, it will probably be at a level where people could use it. I mean, it's like part of the caveat here is that it's going to be expensive, and that's not something that most comedians have access to. But it might be an aid sooner. But my kind of longer term view on it would be the point about context from earlier, which is that to understand all the complexities that kind of go into making a joke, like what the audience's background and knowledge is, how to adapt a joke based on what's already happened earlier in the show, to make sure that it doesn't clash with other stuff, how to make sure that a joke is like not punching up or punching down, is only punching up and not punching down, by which I mean like not insulting people who are less privileged than the person that tells it, and making the audience feel uncomfortable that you're kind of victimizing someone. I think to have that kind of context, you would need to have a artificial general intelligence to kind of understand history and race and kind of gender politics and crowd dynamics and like all kinds of stuff like that, which we're nowhere near having at the moment.
I wonder whether that aspect of AI will become kind of increasingly important in terms of the structure of how comedians become successful. More so than ever is kind of a building of your kind of own audience. The kind of the traditional gatekeepers of kind of middle-sized clubs, particularly for stand-up, kind of don't really exist anymore. And part of that is because people can Google comedy night on, and they can say, oh, it's my favorite comedian, Catherine Ryan, is on. Oh, and she's coming to town on Wednesday, rather than where in the past it might be like, oh, I wish to see something funny. How will I do that? We'll go down to the big comedy lols club on the comedy night, which is Fridays.
Yeah, I need someone who's in the industry to tell me, like I need someone to arbit that information for me.
Yeah. And things like in the past, things like television would be the way that you become famous, whereas now television and the old media producers will be looking for people who already have a following, and they can benefit from that, and that following can be made online and things like that. And I wonder whether it's that kind of online marketplace where you may, as a performer or a writer, be needing those kind of new tech tools to stay kind of ahead. Like, where do you put your content? Should you be putting it as a 9 or a 10-minute video? Should you be doing it as a 1-minute video? Should there be subtitles on it? What kind of platform suits you as a performer the best? Where is your audience? What are the hashtags that people are searching for? What kind of images are catching kind of people's eyes and stuff like that? We think of this sort of thing as being maybe recently we kind of discovered that was becoming a big part of elections. We kind of always sort of known that businesses were kind of doing that sort of stuff. But as a performer, whether it's a solo stand-up or whatever it is, maybe that's something that will become a much more common thing. Am I on the right track, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's I guess it's difficult to imagine it, because as I said earlier, for you and I, and for people who kind of care about comedy and see it as an art, it's almost impossible to imagine it being commodified in that way and reduced to numbers and tests and experiments, and that there can be a perfect joke. That's the kind of assumption behind it, or at least that there can be a joke. You can identify in advance that a joke is going to appeal to a certain demographic, maybe not a universal joke, but like as you say, like this following. This is the content that they need. It's going to make them laugh and build the audience. But you're right. Like it happens in loads of other industries, and it's pretty prevalent. Like I was surprised, last year when it all over Twitter, people were complaining about Netflix's use of their data to like recommend them. They like Netflix are tracking what you watch and how long you watch it for and where you turn off and where you pause, and they're using that to recommend more content for you. And people were up in arms about this. And at the time I thought, oh, maybe I'm too deep into this through my work. But that seems obvious to me. Like I was like, I think I'd be surprised if they said they weren't. Like businesses, the way their display advertising works, like, the stuff that you block out of your ad blocker if you've got any brains. But the way that works is that these businesses are testing, sometimes thousands of variations, and Facebook are famous for doing it, of like, thousands of variations of like infinitesimally different shades of blue for their logos and buttons, because which button color encourages when you give it to 10 million people worldwide. What if a couple of shades different of blue makes 20 more people click the button? But because no one clicks adverts, like those margins make quite a big difference, because 20 people is significant. And so the scale of like data experimentations that are going on is enormous and incredibly sophisticated, and in some ways has like the data from my kind of work as a marketer, like in some ways the data experimentation has actually gone beyond the value of it. So people know more detail about exactly what would work on a digital advert, but there's an assumption that efficiency, so how many people can I get to click this advert out of 10 million people that see it, what's the difference between 20 and 21? Like that's an important difference. The kind of data-driven approach has overtaken a sense of like effectiveness rather than efficiency. So sure, we can make this advert infinitesimally better, but it still needs to have a kind of creative thinking behind it for anyone to click it anyway. So actually the problem might not be that the button color is slightly wrong. The problem might be that your advert's racist, or that your advert is, like not interesting. Right. Yeah. So, that's the challenge, right? Is that you could say, okay, like I want to make jokes about like, I don't know, like the, like glass blowing. That's what I'm interested in. Like, no, there's no other comedians in the world doing comedy about glass blowing. And I know that there's like, according to Facebook data, there's 500,000 people in the world who practice glass blowing as a hobby in their spare time. I want to tap into that market. So I'm going to...
We all need to be tapping that market, Daniel.
Yeah. I'm going to use an AI to determine what are the perfect jokes to tap into the glass blowing market. These glass blowers are going to absolutely love these jokes. They're going to be dying for it. Like, you've never seen a glass blower laugh so hard. They won't be able to blow any glass because they've got no air left in their lungs. That's how funny these jokes are about glass blowing. But it turns out all of those glass blowers live in different places around the world. And it was a pointless demographic to go for in the first place. Apologies to like any glass blowers watching this video.
I'm going to get letters. Down.
Yeah. So like, as you say, like you might be trying to find different audiences, but so what might happen then, therefore, in the comedy industry, if that was the case, that people felt they had to like seek out a new audience, is actually a like rapid kind of decentralization of like the topics that get talked about, because people are trying to reach different groups and create followings. And actually, as you said earlier, like the thing of like knowing what jokes every other comedian has made so that you could not steal them would mean that no one would, like in an ideal world, if people were, everyone was moral and didn't steal each other's jokes, everyone would talk about different stuff and make different jokes. And it would like decentralize really quickly so that no comedian sounded anything like each other. It would be really difficult to make a gig because you'd have like the comedians would have nothing in common. And actually a lot of comedy and a lot of art comes from repackaging and reinventing, and we're like, in a kind of postmodern way, chopping up and rearranging parts of existing stuff. So like how, I think that would be very difficult to achieve. What I do think on that one is that the whole point of following AI conclusions is that it draws people towards what tend to be a narrower and narrower set of conclusions, in looking for a perfect or as universal as possible and a single outcome which works. And so because every time an AI tries an experiment that doesn't work, it gets filtered out. And so in the way the markets work though, if more and more people are being encouraged by the YouTube algorithm, for example, or whatever it is, to be funneled towards the same types of content, that content does particularly well, but it no longer, it doesn't fulfill the requirement that we have for like, this is an emotional requirement, but to feel like we've discovered something, to feel like, like you start to then develop like cult figures and fringe comedy or fringe art and so on. And so it's kind of waves, like kind of machine, in that it kind of creates a lot of momentum towards one thing, but like that, the center can't hold on it, and it kind of falls apart again.
I wonder whether this has always been a sort of a speculative suggestion with thinking technologies, AI and otherwise, that creativity is like the hardest thing for the computer to emulate. And so the sort of kind of suggestion that you've got there is that as AI produces more and more kind of narrow outcomes, that in order to sort of refresh that process and have a re-narrowing, you're going to re-need that human element to come up with something original and unthought of before.
Yeah. So there's a good metaphor for this, which is that if you're trying to find the highest point on a map, on a like a OS map, you could from whichever point you're at go uphill, and you would continue to go uphill. You'd follow the contour lines. You go uphill, uphill, uphill until you reach the peak. But once you get there, you can't go any higher, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you've found the highest point on the map.
Yeah.
You've only followed the what the data suggested at every point you should do. But there's loads of, and sometimes AI doesn't recognize those things because it doesn't take leaps. It only follows, a mathematical best progression from where it currently is.
I believe it's technically called being trapped in a local optimum. So if you've got a series of large hills or other things that could be good, you get one, you get to the top of that one, and it's great, but you would have to forget everything that it knows to go back to the beginning to re-climb back up, gets trapped in something locally optimum. And so presumably with any algorithm, you need to keep taking the human being back to it, to keep checking what's gone on inside the black box. I think that's remarkably important in things like if we're automating kind of legal sentencing and stuff like that. We might think by removing the human being, we're removing kind of bias in any kind of judgment. Maybe if we were judging the quality of comedy by using an AI algorithm, like by measuring some sort of series of likes or like laughs per minute or something like that, we need to check what the code is doing again to ensure that it's not got stuck in a local optimum, this peak that's kind of good, but there's not a previous peak higher. Every so often we'll need to kind of clear away, start again. And so maybe it's a definitional point that there'll always need to be the creator of the machine to check in again, certainly before like the singularity and all sorts of that, that kind of thing.
I guess part of the challenge there on an AI front is that if an AI is making predictions based on kind of observed mathematics or recorded data from the natural environment, like if an AI was trying to guess how high a ball is going to bounce based on how high it's bounced a million times before from the same height, like it can make that, and there's not really a bias there. Because the data that it has and the feedback loop is only measured mathematical external data. As soon as it's trying to ingest subjective human data, it immediately becomes subject, as you said, to all of the human biases that go as part of that. So in a comedy sense, that might be that it's measuring laughs on all of the YouTube videos, for example. But what if YouTube is populated like by people who share a general political persuasion, which then makes the AI believe that everyone, a greater proportion of people have that political persuasion? What if it becomes, for example, very white Western centric because there are fewer people in emerging countries who have access to YouTube or who have time to spend hours watching YouTube videos and leaving comments that say lol or like, anti-Trump sentiment or, whatever it is, or like complaining about woke SJWs like that. So it might become very white for that reason due to like socioeconomics. It might be that men have a propensity to leave comments more often and the AI doesn't recognize that it's not getting female input. So that's where you need the sociological or the kind of the humanities view being taken into account along with the mathematical view, because it's very easy, I think, for a scientist or a social scientist to look at a set of data and apply scientific methods to it and recognize the biases, but without some kind of, as you say, some kind of mediating voice, what's to stop AI from only exacerbating the existing biases and prejudices that the data set already has?
Yeah, I think it's a really important kind of moral question for that sort of thing. Like, if we become blind to why things are being recommended, we can have all sorts of unwanted consequences. I think it's kind of important to remember that comedy, it matters. Like people, maybe not even directly, in the sense that, I guess it's really important to laugh. That's a lovely human response. But what laughter is often a form of agreement. Laughter controls kind of attention and stuff like that. People can use humor to influence, and so anything that draws our attention now, can change elections and things like that. And people seek out humorous things by laughing at it. They often kind of agree with it. You can often have your mind changed by satire and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it matters. And so if we do start with that in the promotion of comedy, or the selecting for what comedy you get seen or whatever, I think it matters that we keep checking what the algorithm is doing. And why, my background's in philosophy. I get a big bee in my bonnet when people are like, what's the point in the humanities? And it's like, well, because you want to live in a society that's worth living in, right? You need to check your first principles before the data. And there's for great debate to be had about those first principles. If people are laughing at stuff that's kind of unhealthy, it's just recommending, like men all the time, or like a particular social group. That matters. Quiet voices.
Yeah, we live in a subjectively experienced world, right? So to suggest that only objective measures have any value is to completely ignore everything that every person has ever experienced.